pace has dropped on a new edition of Soccer Down Here. It's March 3rd. It is a Tuesday Thoughts edition of the show, so share your thoughts with us on Twitter at Soccer Down Here. Let us know what is on your mind on, a Tuesday after the first week of the MLS season. We were slightly distracted yesterday by the news about Josef Martinez, but there were 12 other games in Major League Soccer last weekend. We'll get into that. I want to hear your thoughts on what stood out, who stood out, both positive and negative. Let us know what's on your mind when we talk about Week 2 coming up this weekend with some very interesting matchups. And I think the one here in Atlanta is on that list, with Atlanta hosting FC Cincinnati, who didn't win on the road at Red Bull Arena. Didn't look good at all early in that match, but definitely improved as the day went on and got a good performance out of their new striker, Jurgen Locadia. He will be a handful at the Benz on Saturday. All kinds of other stuff going on in the American soccer world and the soccer world in general. So whatever you want to get into this morning, that's what we're here for. A couple things before we get rolling. Tonight, weather permitting, and hopefully it will permit, we will be in Roswell, Parkview High School, traveling to face Roswell High School in our Soccer Down Here Georgia High School games of the week. Girls game starts just before 6 o'clock. We'll be on about 5:45, and the boys game will be following shortly after. Two big-time programs in the state of Georgia, John.
Yeah, and this is one of the games that you had circled when we were putting together the dream schedule, and there's a lot of anticipation for this one. Slow start for Roswell on the boys' side, but once again, when you mention Parkview and you mention Roswell, this one's going to be interesting both on the girls and the boys side. So looking forward to heading up to Ray Manus Stadium and seeing what it's going to be like up there on the turf for these two starting just before 6 o'clock.
Yeah, it might be a little wet on the turf. Hopefully no lightning or storming or anything in the vicinity. So stay tuned. We'll let you know if anything changes. I know should be a good crowd tonight if the weather cooperates. Looking forward to it. Obviously, I think most people have seen the news out of Nashville this morning, and all of our thoughts are with so many of the people that we met and talked to and hung out with this past weekend. A lot of Atlanta fans spent a lot of time in Nashville over the weekend, and I don't know if we really will know the full extent of the tornado's damage until we get a little bit later in the day, but pretty devastating to see this morning.
Yeah, numbers are fluctuating, and obviously, being the news guy that I am, been keeping an eye on the live stuff that's been going on. It was a 200-mile track overnight. A lot of damage in the downtown area. In the downtown area, you could have a couple of buildings that are okay, and then the next block over, you have a lot of damage. 40 buildings, I think, was the number that's being put out there right now in the downtown area. East Nashville was hit pretty hard, and the secondary airport was hit pretty hard. And there's video, I want to say, from David Accam from his apartment that got hit as a part of this. And so, obviously, and one of the cool things that I've seen this morning is instantly the Atlanta United family reached out to the Nashville soccer family as well, if there's anything that you need, anything like that. But very, very cool to see the hands from Atlanta United reaching out to Nashville. Obviously, we'll keep everybody posted with what's going on up there, but a very scary night for a lot of folks up there in Nashville.
Yeah, we went through this with a storm that came through, almost downtown Atlanta years ago, and probably missed where I was living by, I want to say a couple miles. Which seems like a long way, but when something like this hits, it's not. So keep an eye on Nashville SC and all the different supporters groups accounts. I'm sure there will be some things needed, and it'd be very cool if we can help, kind of organize and pull that stuff together and help out. So stay tuned. We'll keep you posted from what we see. Where do you want to start when we get into the first week of MLS? A little bit of a recap this morning.
Well, why don't we just start from the beginning with the first match that hit the board and work our way forward?
Go for it.
DC United and Colorado, and it was a back and forth match, and Colorado got one late to get the Duke 2-1. I know a lot of folks in the Atlanta United footprint were interested in seeing one individual in particular, but Colorado ends up with full points.
Yeah, Julian Gressel had an assist off a corner kick. Looked like Clint Irwin kind of lost it in the wind a bit and tried to fight through a crowd, wasn't able to get to the ball. Russell Canals heads it home. DC looks like they're in decent shape. Well, then it kind of fell apart. Kai Kamara with a goal in the 67th minute. And then just sloppy at the very end. Jonathan Lewis with the winner in the 92nd. And it looked like it had been coming for a while. DC's got some big questions lineup-wise. The lineup they went with here featured Russell Canals, who is a very good defensive midfielder. He was at right back. Felipe and Junior Moreno were in the holding midfield. Julian Gressel was the number 10. Edison Flores was out on the right wing. I don't get it. The biggest thing is you don't have a right back. We've talked about this for months. They don't have a right back. They literally don't have somebody that they trust at that position. O'Neal Fisher, Chris Adoy-Atcham were both on the bench. They didn't trust either one, and they moved Canals over there. I don't know. I just don't know. The thing with Gressel and Flores, like, they just need to be flipped. I don't really get why it started this way. Gressel is not as effective centrally. He's always going to look to drift out wide, and that can create overloads, but it can also leave the middle exposed, and I think it did, especially late in the match. So Ben Olsen's got some work to do in figuring this out. And we flip it to the Rapid side of things. This is a really good group, and it wasn't at full strength. You know, they did not have Nicholas Benezet in the lineup here. Andre Shinyashiki got the start. And Shinyashiki, good player. Really, really good player. Rookie of the Year last year. He played out on the wing here. But this team is quality. Sam Nicholson's an underrated player in this league. The holding midfield of Kellen Acosta, Jack Price, strong. Drew Moore got the start on the back line next to Lalas Abubakar. Worked out very, very well. And you've got two excellent outside backs with this group in Vines and Rosenberry. So keep an eye on Colorado. They don't have a bunch of big-name superstars, but they're going to be a team that has a say in what happens in the Western Conference. I was really impressed with them, and I'm still shaking my head a little bit about the lineups for DC. And until they get a right back, they're going to have some issues.
And yeah, you've been high on Colorado ever since we started, breaking down the Western Conference. And when Nicholas Benezet is back and healthy, I want to see how he integrates into the lineup. I admit that, last year, full disclosure, kept an eye on Andre Shinyashiki, enjoyed seeing him in his rookie year. The offseason acquisitions seem to have, locked down the back line when you've got Rosenberry, Abubakar, Moore, and Vines, and you got a good match out of Price. But like I said, when Benezet comes in, looking forward to seeing how he integrates. And so early returns for Colorado, all good.
It's a good win on the road, and those are always, great to put in your back pocket because you can never guarantee 3 points on the road in this league. New England was a prime example of that. Most people expected New England to go to Montreal and beat a team that had to fight in the CONCACAF Champions League in midweek. Not so fast. Montreal gets it done with 2 goals after falling behind early. Teal Bunbury opened the scoring in the 13th. Romel Kyoto in the 37th to equalize, and Maxi Urruti with a great one in the 80th. Impact get the win at home at the Big O.
You look at the 5 in the middle, Bojan, Urruti, Kyoto, Taider, Piet. That's solid. You look at that, and that's a great, half of the 10 that's in front of Clement Diop right now. And, I admit, once again, I was surprised by Montreal on a quick turn and seeing what we got out of them. But, once again, I look on the flip side to New England, and you see Bunbury, Bow, and Pania, and Buksha, and all of that lineup up top, and I'm just as anticipatory, if that's a word this early in the morning, looking forward to seeing what New England is going to come up with long term. But yeah, completely surprised that Montreal ended up with full points on the quick turn like that.
The reason I'm surprised is Montreal's back line featured 37-year-old Rod Fanni, Luis Binks making his second appearance coming over from Tottenham, and Joel Waterman making his first MLS appearance coming over from the Canadian Premier League. That's your back three in the 3-4-2-1 that Thierry Henry trotted out. Wing backs, Jorge Corrales, Zachary Brock-Guillard. Good, solid. Brock-Guillard they bring back from, he was on loan last year. Good addition. What was interesting about Montreal is it wasn't Boyan in the midfield and Maxi Urruti up top as we've typically seen. It was the other way around. Urruti was in the 2. Boyan was in the 1. Boyan was more of a false 9. And if you're looking at ways that Atlanta could potentially look with a Pity Martinez as a number 9, Montreal's not a bad team to take a look at because Boyan as a 9 is not traditional. Played it at Barcelona at times in the false 9 role. He's doing that in Montreal. It's different. Now, there are pluses and minuses to it, and I think in this case with the Impact, they have a player like Urruti when they need somebody up top as a true number 9. That's an easy switch, and that's a switch that can happen in the run of play quite a bit. But keep an eye on what the Impact are doing. I've been impressed so far with Thierry Henry getting through this early phase of the season with injuries. We'll see how it continues to grow. On the New England side, they don't have Carlos Heel yet. He's dealing with an injury. They need him back. He provides a big extra spark. Maybe the biggest surprise is Michael Mancian on the bench to start and Henry Kessler starting at center back. DeJuan Jones starting at left back as well. New England has a lot of talent. I think they added more talent in the offseason. They should be better this year, but this is the kind of result that you take a little bit of a pause and say, all right, let's see where this can go with Bruce Arena because they finished so strongly. I expected them to hit the ground running a little more strongly. Let's go down to Houston, 1-1 between the Dynamo and the Galaxy. A lot of talk about Chicharito, not really on the same page with his teammates. Christian Pavón didn't need any help, scored in the 13th minute. Probably, although the voting might change this, probably the goal of the week in Week 1 in MLS. Mauro Manotas equalized in the 54th. I don't know if you could say it's a great result for Houston. They were missing some pieces. It's not a great result for the Galaxy, who I think have better expectations. Probably both teams are left a little wanting at the end of it.
Yeah, and the Galaxy had an early chance from Alexander Katai in the second minute, had another chance in the second half with Joe Corona. But, I think that once again, does Houston take more out of this, knowing that they've clamped down on the Galaxy? Is it a good building block for Tab Ramos going forward? And then the Galaxy sit there and look at all of the missed opportunities and chances that they had to come out of there with full points and didn't. And I know that it was a sold-out crowd at BBVA Stadium in Houston, and from my personal perspective, I'm just hoping that those casual fans, the first-time fans, saw something in Houston, that building block that I was talking about, out of this first match, and they continue to come back, that this wasn't just something where we're going to go this first time because Chicharito was there for the LA Galaxy, and then we're done. I'm hoping that building block brings more folks back for more matches this season.
Oh, it's going to take time. I don't think anybody thinks that way about, I'm going to go and I'm never going back. I hope not, anyway. Yeah. I think it's just going to take time. You have to build up this relationship, and the Dynamo didn't have their full complement of weapons to do it. No Darwin Quintero, no Albert Ellis. They need to continue. I mean, Tab Ramos is going to take some time to build what he wants to do with the Dynamo. I think he will. I just hope that the fans start to jump on board and slowly gather some steam down in Texas with the Dynamo. It's a good result. for them on paper, I think they probably want a little bit more out of it. The Galaxy have bigger expectations. Both teams are just going to be kind of like, all right, let's get better for week 2. I think the same could be said for San Jose and Toronto. It's a 2-2. Toronto had a 2-goal lead in the 51st minute. They're not going to be happy about losing that. San Jose is not going to be happy about falling behind by 2 at home, but they will be happy with the fight back. Pozuelo penalty in the 40th. Richie Laryea, 51st minute for Toronto. 53rd minute, cutting the lead in half, Andres Rios. And then 95th minute, beautiful free kick from Osvaldo Alanis to equalize. What'd you take out of this one?
I took out of that the Alanis goal and the points that you had as well. Toronto up 2-0, you surrender 2. You're going to look at that, and then that's going to be focus going forward. San Jose, you're down 2, but you come back and you fight with Rios and Alanis. And I know a lot of folks are saying that last gasp goal should also be a part of the goal of the week discussion, and it should be. Tremendous set piece from them at the absolute death to come out of there with a point. But yeah, you look at both teams and you're going, okay, we were either down 2 or up 2 and something happens. You come out of there with only 1 point. I think that this is something that's going to be on the whiteboard this week going forward. It's like, okay, we have to do this. We can't do this. And we can't get ourselves in these situations where we're either down or up and have to fight back as hard as we did to either get back and come up with a tie or end up surrendering a lead.
So here's where Greg Vanney's going to be very unhappy about it. Started with a 4-4-2-ish kind of empty bucket / Pozuelo dropping in behind Altidore. You had Schaffelberg out on the left, Endo out on the right, so the 2 central midfielders with no Michael Bradley for a while. The 2 central midfielders were Jonathan Osorio, Marky Delgado. Okay, with the lead at 2-1, they started to get more defensive, and they brought on Liam Frazier, who is, I think, the long-term heir apparent to Michael Bradley. He comes on to solidify the midfield. You pull Pozuelo and Altidore late, and you still concede an equalizer. That's a problem. I think Vanney's going to have to figure out the balance without Bradley. Does it need to start with Frazier? Does Delgado or Osorio need to become that deep-lying player? What's the combination in the middle of the field? Because it started well, but when you went more defensive to hold it, you failed in doing so. And that's going to be a problem, and that's something Toronto can't do too much of in the early going without Bradley, without Pablo Piatti either, their big designated player winger. Let's go to Dallas. 2-0 win against the Union. Strong home performance. Philadelphia on the road. You expect them to be a little bit better than this. Andrasic with a 61st minute goal. Paxton Pomykal put it away in stoppage time to take it to 2-0. Paxton Pomykal rocking a somewhat creepy mustache. I don't know how to feel about this. It's a little creepy. And Tanner Tessman gets the start. This is a player who signed a homegrown deal like late last week, a player who was going to be a kicker at Clemson and play for Clemson's soccer team. Well, not so much. He's going to start for FC Dallas instead, and he did really well playing next to Thiago Santos. Dallas comes in with a expected lineup outside of Tessman getting the start with Santos. Michael Barrios, Fafa Pico on either side of Jesus Ferreira. The Cobra up top, Andrasic. Philadelphia, not at full strength yet. Not completely fully built yet. Warren Creval got the start as the 6 in their diamond. Montero and Bedoya on either side. Aronson as the point of the diamond. Sergio Santos and Kasper Shabilko got the start up top. Dallas made a little bit of a statement here, and Philadelphia's just got to get all the pieces together.
Yeah, and I was going to specifically ask you about the youth that's there. Pomykal and Tessman were going to be my question for you about, once again, we see what Dallas has been building from within and coming forward, and then you put Tessman in the lineup and you get this kind of a result.
Well, Tessman's the only surprise. I mean, if you're surprised by Paxton Pomacall at this point, you're not paying attention. Like, Pomacall is one of the top young players in the United States, and coming back from an injury, did not get the start, but he comes in and scores a great goal to put this thing away. Tessman is just another one of these developed players from the Dallas Academy that steps in and doesn't look out of place. And that's the key, and that's down to the work that started with Oscar Pareja, that continued with Lucha Gonzalez. This team, when you bring guys up from the academy, they look like they've been there. And that's the important part, and that's the hard part. Because, look, academy action, North Texas SC and USL League One, going from there to the first division to FC Dallas, it's a jump. It's a legitimate jump in terms of pace of play, in terms of quality of play. For these guys to be able to do this quickly, it's incredibly impressive, and there's a lot of clubs in this league that can learn from that. You have a lot of years of doing this as well. I mean, I went back to Pareja working in the academy under Shellis Heinemann. Like, it's going that far back to build these building blocks. It doesn't happen overnight, but there are building blocks there that you can learn from, and Tessman's just the next one in a long list. Philadelphia, I don't take too much out of this as, oh no, Philadelphia is not going to be what they were last year. I think it's just Dallas is probably a little bit better than they've been getting credit for coming into the season. They got into the playoffs as the last seed in last year. They gave Seattle everything they could handle. Are they going to be better than the 7th seed this year? It's a good Western Conference, so maybe not, but I think Dallas as a whole is a better team than they were last year. Orlando and RSL, I don't know if RSL is going to be the 3 seed in the West. I don't know if Orlando is a playoff team yet. I don't think we really learned too much about either one in a scoreless draw in Central Florida. Neither team full strength yet. RSL still figuring out what their attack is going to look like. You had Tate Schmidt and Aaron Herrera starting in the wide positions that used to be Bofo Salcedo and Jefferson Savarino. That's going to take a little bit of time. Justin Merrim could end up taking one of those. And by the way, the PA announcer in Orlando, when Justin Merrim was introduced, that's awful. There's just no other way around it. And this is a PA announcer. This is a either team employee or stadium employee. It's not a fan. It's not the supporters groups. Look, we know the supporters groups don't like Justin Merrim in Orlando. They can do all the signs and chants and all that. That's fine. That's honestly to be expected. A PA announcer doing what he did to throw shade at Justin Merrim is... It's not something that this league should be endorsing. It's not something that any team in this league should be endorsing. It's not okay, because you know the vibe. You know what's going to happen when you do that. It's very disappointing to see that stuff, because it doesn't happen on its own. It doesn't happen by accident. It's not just, oh, I'm going to do this randomly. Like, these things, it's a very
there was
bad
forethought.
Look. It's a very, very bad look. And I really hope that there is something said about it at the league level, because that should not be happening. Anyway, Merrim came on as a sub. RSL's got to figure out the wide positions, because that's their biggest subtraction from last year. Orlando's got to figure out the attack. I feel like their back line, their goalkeeper with Pedro Gallese, they've got the back line bringing Antonio Carlos into it with Robin Janssen, who's a good center back. I still wonder a little bit about Joao Moutinho as a left back. I think pace can cause him some problems. Juan on the right side, very dangerous. Holding midfield, Junior Urso did start next to Sebastian Mendez. It's the attack, and Mauricio Pereira should be better for them as a number 10. Nani did not play here, and he will be back next week. That will help them a lot. And it just got to figure out up top. Dom Dwyer, injured, did not play. Tesho Akindele started here. Benji Michel was out wide. Chris Mueller was out wide. That's going to be the hardest thing for Oscar Pareja this season, is the attack. Orlando has to score more goals if they want to do anything this year.
Yeah, I mean, in watching the tail end of this match, there wasn't really a whole lot to write home about, but I am glad that you addressed the PA situation because that made the rounds. But yeah, this was not a match that folks write home about, sit there and keep in their DVR.
No, this is not an instant classic. You're not going to go back and watch this one for fun. Vancouver hosted Sporting Kansas City in the nightcap. Vancouver's not going to go back and watch this one for fun either. There's big questions about the Whitecaps this season. Sporting Kansas City goes in and wins 3-1. If you haven't seen the GIF of Peter Vermes, that's the GIF of the season. I don't think it's going to be topped. It's a very entertaining one with him saying two words that I'm not going to repeat over and over again in different forms. I think one's a question, one's a declaration. It's fascinating. So Peter Vermes leads his squad to the win. Alan Pulido gets a goal early on. Gadi Kinda could be one of the surprises in the league. Out of a lot of big-name additions, he's flying under the radar just a bit. Good performance from him. On the Vancouver side, you get 3-1 loss at home in the opener. That's not how you want to start your season.
No, and I had heard of the Peter Vermes GIF, and I finally just saw it. And you go from a declarative to an interrogative with the same colorful phrase. That's pretty sweet. That's good. But yeah, I look at Vancouver and I'm just like, I don't know. I mean, yeah, you got the goal from Nerwinski to tie it at 1, but I think, honestly, I just think it's going to be a very long season again in Vancouver. I'm hoping that Lucas Cavallini can be the offensive force that a lot of folks were looking forward to seeing. I'm concerned about getting the ball to him so he can do it, and then defending and making sure that the ball doesn't go in the back of the net. Maxime Crépeau can only save you so much out of situations, and Atlanta United fans remember Crépeau and his ability to stand on his head. But yeah, I have tremendous concerns about Vancouver and the bottom of the West right now. It's going to be a long year if this is any indication.
I just don't know if they're any better than they were last year, and that's a problem because they don't have enough talent. They just do not have enough talent. There's no other way around it. Columbus got a 1-0 win over New York City. They got some help from a very early red card to Maxime Chanot. So the result expected. Lucas Zelarayan gets the goal in the 56th minute. New York City fought pretty hard to keep it like this. They battled. They didn't really pack it in or anything after the early red card. So hard to take a ton out of this one because of the 11v10 nature of it for so long. The one surprise for me a little bit, and have to dig into the Columbus side of things to see if there was an injury that caused it. Yunus Mokhtar got the start out wide in place of Luis Diaz. Not sure the reasoning there, but the rest of the team was about what you would expect, and it was Darlington Nagbe who sat deeper in that 6 role. Artur played his typical 8 role. Not really tested as much playing up against 10. I want to see if that holds up over time because it reminds me in some ways of the conversation we had about LAFC in the playoffs last year with Edward Atuesta, one of the best holding midfielders in the league, not really a defensively minded holding midfielder, and there's going to be some times where you need that, and they don't really have that in Columbus. So how are you going to deal with those moments? Are you going to be able to dominate possession to the point that those moments are few and far between?
And with the Chanot red, next week there's Toronto FC coming down on your schedule, and obviously that's going to be an adjustment for NYCFC.
Nah, you got options. That's honestly, in some ways, that's a good thing because Chanot gets to rest ahead of Tigres in CONCACAF Champions League. You got Sebastian Ibeagha. I mean, you've got Ibeagha. You could turn to Sands if you wanted to put him to the back line like he played last year quite a bit. So you've got options. I mean, it's not a huge deal. for next week.
But yeah, I mean, once again, 11v10, you can't really take I don't think you can take a whole lot out of it just because it wasn't even strength for basically the entirety of the match. But you mentioned what you're looking at for midfielders and such, and Columbus gets out of there with a win, first match out. Good for Columbus in the new round of the Caleb Porter administration. And once again, I'm looking for big things from Lucas Zelarayan. He got the goal on the board with the screamer in the second half. But good for Columbus getting full points out of the blocks with the new guy up top.
Red Bulls tried to run Cincinnati out of the building, didn't finish it off until later, but Kyle Duncan and Kaku with 2 early goals. It's 2-0 in the 27th minute, looking very dicey for Cincinnati. Alan Cruz pulls one back in the first minute of the second half. Danny Royer takes the lead back to 3-1. Jurgen Locadia had a number of chances after coming on late. He got one, made it 3-2, made it a little shaky towards the end, but the Red Bulls get the win in their home opener.
Yeah, and, you look at things from a Red Bulls perspective, and it goes back to what we were talking about earlier. With you've got a lead, and you look like everything is going to be in control, but then you see what FC Cincinnati does, and they're not giving up. They're still coming at you, and it's Cruz and it's Locadia. And Locadia coming on in the second half, you get the result from him in the 83rd. And is it safe to say that FC Cincinnati, even after their visit to Atlanta, will be a team of intrigue this season in the Eastern Conference?
What do you mean by that?
Just in the sense of, they're not going to win every match out there. But if this is any early indication, they could be down 2 goals. They're still going to come at you. And with all of the firepower that they have with guys like Cruz and Locadia, they're going to keep things interesting for you all season long because of what they have on hand right now offensively.
The flip side is the Red Bulls aren't that good. I mean, just let's be real about it. The flip side is the Red Bulls lineup, there's big questions about it. It's not that strong. So is this a case of Cincinnati has a lot of firepower, or is it a case of, 2 not so great teams and the home team won? We'll find out over time. I don't know how much to take out of to that point to say that, well, Cincinnati's a team you got to watch. I don't know. The left side, they got lit up early on, and it got a little bit better, but there were whispers about Yuya Kubo, and if he's out wide, you're not going to get anything defensively from him. And if that's the case, if you're going to play a 4-3-3 and you know that, you can deal. But Kubo and Garza on that left side, it did not look good early. Both goals came from that side of the field in the early going. They've got to figure this out. They got to get Locadia in the team from the start because he's definitely got a presence with this group. Vasquez got an assist on the first goal, but Jurgen Locadia is a player that they're expecting a lot from. And then they're going to have to figure out what the rest of the team looks like. Is it Kubo out wide, knowing that you're not going to get a ton defensively? That's fine. If you construct the team to deal with that, okay. Harris Medunjanin as your 6, you're not going to get a ton of range from him, so you're going to have to protect that. There's things about this group that, it felt like they slipped through the cracks here, and those things can happen when you have what happened with Ron Jans leaving, Dame coming back in as the interim. Some of the details can get lost, and this is a team that looked on paper like it had some frailties, and the Red Bulls exploited it. We'll see if that changes throughout the year. Next one, Seattle, 2-1 winners over Chicago. Seattle had to work for this. Chicago actually got the first goal to start the second half. Jordan Morris came on at halftime and scored both Seattle goals, 62nd minute and then a 93rd minute winner. The Sounders, after their collapse in CONCACAF, they really needed a win here, and they got it, but it wasn't easy.
No, and I look at Chicago. And once again, you sit there and it's the question that we've had with teams this morning. You have a lead and you lose it. And that's what you're going to have. That's the biggest takeaway for me. Yes, it took Jordan Morris coming off the bench and scoring 2 for it to happen, but you had a 1-0 lead in one of the tougher places to play in Major League Soccer, and you come out of there with nothing. So,
but are you surprised by that? You sound like you're surprised.
I'm surprised in the sense that you had an advantage on a team who's coming in on short rest. The overall result, no, I'm not surprised that Seattle ended up with the win. But the way that Seattle won is how I'm looking at it. Chicago first on the board. You get the lead right after halftime.
Who in this Chicago Fire team are you going to turn to lock something down? They got a lead, sure, but who are the Chicago Fire in 2020? I'm not surprised. It's one, you're on the road. I mean, it's two different conversations. Like I know it's easy to try to compare Toronto 2-0 lead in San Jose, blowing it and getting a draw, to Chicago 1-0 lead, blowing it, getting nothing. Chicago and Toronto are two completely different things. Two completely, utterly different things. It's like comparing Coca-Cola and Faygo. Coca-Cola, you know what you're going to get with it. So Toronto blowing the lead the way they did, that's a little surprising. You don't expect the Coke to go flat like that. Chicago, getting a 1-0 lead and then blowing it, the Faygo goes flat in like 30 seconds. So no shock. I think for Chicago, they've got to prove some things first. What they proved here is that they're not a pushover. And that's a step in the right direction. I think you got to give them credit for that. They're coming from a different place, and I don't know what we've necessarily learned about Chicago just yet. I want to see a little bit more about how they play. Brant Bronico got the start at right back, not playing in the holding midfield here. The center back duo, Calvo and Kappelhoff. Bornstein on the left, that's expected. Jordy Mihailovic. I like Mihailovic and what he can bring to this team. He was out wide in this one. Frankowski, good winger there. Robert Baric, he got the goal. Okay, and he looked pretty lively at times. Okay, Chicago's not at full strength either. They've got more players coming. Gaston Jimenez should help this team in a big way. For Chicago, I think there's some positives to take out of this. I don't think you're looking at this in a negative sense at all because you're starting from nothing. I mean, you're just happy if we're going to continue with the Faygo comparison, you're just happy to get on the shelf, let alone like actually somebody bought you. That's good. Seattle, more questions for Seattle for me. And they gave up a goal to a Chicago team that's, coming in. You didn't really expect to score a bunch of goals, so that's a question mark. You did have to rotate a bit, and I'll go back to my number one question when it comes to Seattle. Can they do anything without Nico Lodeiro? They struggled here without Nico Lodeiro. They didn't really show a whole lot in CONCACAF in terms of, I think, just overall strength without Nico Lodeiro. And with this defense being what it is, I don't know if they're a contender at the moment. Now, we've seen Seattle be in this case every year since 2016. Slow start, dog paddling along, and then they get somebody in the summer, and it changes. And maybe that's what it's going to take here. I don't know. But the defense has to be better. Lodeiro needs to be in this team for them to be at full strength. I look at Seattle far more with a side eye about this result than Chicago, because I have no expectations for Chicago.
No, I mean, I really don't either. But we've had questions, and we talked about the questions with Seattle ever since the offseason. It's like, okay, how are you going to address issues at the back? And you look at, and that's, for me, that's the headliner, and it's going to be on a match-by-match basis when we're talking about Seattle. Defensively, how are you going to stop people from scoring? But then the whole thing about tendinitis. Tendinitis isn't something that goes away if you're Nico Ladero. So it's something that is constantly monitored, and you're going to have to.
And there goes John. We'll get him back here in a minute. All right. Let's move on for a second. We will keep an eye on Ladero. We will keep an eye on Seattle and what happens. They've got to get better defensively, and they got to figure out what's up with Ladero. Let's go to Bank of California Stadium. LAFC 1-0 over Miami. Carlos Vela with a just beautiful golazo. It was not easy for LAFC, and that's somewhat to be expected because of what they had to do on Thursday night in CONCACAF. They did handle that one. They did handle this one. Miami made them work for it. The changes on the LAFC side coming into this, Janela got the start for Atuesta. Backline, Jordan Harvey got the start on the left side for Diego Palacios. That's it. Rest of the team pretty much as is. Miami, this is going to be a work in progress all season. Robbie Robinson from Clemson gets the start up top in his pro debut. Pizarro got the start in the middle with Matias Pellegrini, Lewis Morgan on either side. It was Will Trapp, Victor Ulloa in the holding midfield. Backline saw Alvis Powell on the right side, Ben Sweat on the left, Roman Torres, and Nicolas Figal. Some comparisons already between Figal and Leandro Gonzalez Perez. I believe Taylor Twellman dropped that comparison during the match on a kind of late elbow from Figal over the touchline. I really do think some of that kind of stuff, comparing that play to Leandro Gonzalez Perez, come on, that stuff happened very rarely. Let's slow our roll with that. But Figal and Torres, decent center back pairing. Luis Robles had a couple big saves, as you would expect. This one probably went as you would expect. I mean, I think that's fair with LAFC coming in tired, Miami coming in as the great unknown, but they have talent. 1-0 feels about right, but I think if you look at it without knowing how LAFC came in after Thursday, you might look at it as a bit of a disappointment for them, but they took care of business.
Yeah, I was thinking that LAFC would put more goals on the board, one more perhaps, just coming off a short rest. And there were a couple of challenges. There weren't necessarily elbows from Figal, but there was one challenge where late in the match, LAFC was coming down Miami's left-hand side. They make it inside the area, and Figal slides perpendicular to the action to try to get the ball cleared in a situation like that. And it was a very confident challenge, if I remember the word. That's the word I'll use. It was a very confident challenge going perpendicular to the player to try to get the ball away. So
perpendicular to the player.
Yeah, instead of going into the player, he went sideways to make himself larger and have less space for the player to try to work around and come in along the end line to try to drive inside the six. And so just that kind of a big, confident challenge, but making yourself larger at the same time, that did remind me of LGP. But
okay. I need to go see this because I'm baffled by your description.
Okay. Well, like I said, instead of just going straight in to challenge the player to try to get the ball away, he goes sideways and makes himself larger. And I just thought that the confidence was there, and it reminded me of LGP.
Okay.
Daniel Price, mentioning Miami, says he was rather frustrated by Miami's performance. It's almost there. They had solid chances. They just couldn't finish those chances.
Yeah, but, I mean, it's their first game. It's their first game, I think, with numbers on the back of their shirts. So... yeah, I don't think you can be frustrated by anything. I mean, it's their first game on the road against the best team in the league from last season. It is what it is. I think they showed pretty well in Game 1. I think both Miami and Nashville showed pretty well in Game 1 in different ways, in completely different ways. Miami showed some verve, some flair, some things that you would expect out of a Miami team, and maybe lacked some of the cohesion Nashville was the other way. Nashville showed, I think, a very organized group in game one, which is difficult to do, and it's a credit to Gary Smith. But they didn't have that flair on top. They didn't have that attacking, just scary players. You weren't afraid of Nashville's attack at any point. You have to be afraid of Pizarro, of Pellegrini. I thought Morgan showed some good things in this one, too. They've got to figure out the number 9 for Miami. I mean, it's no knock on Robbie Robinson, but playing in college last fall and going to the MLS opener in L.A., it's tough. That's a big jump. He needs time, and I think for Miami to be what people are expecting, they need an established number 9, and that's something that's going to happen sooner rather than later, I think, for Miami to be the team that everybody wants them to be. Minnesota got their number 9, and I thought it showed. And Minnesota made the biggest statement of week 1 in my mind, winning 3-1 on the road in Portland. Luis Amarilla got 1 goal. Kevin Molino got 2. And Molino's a player that I think is easily forgotten because of the injuries he's had in recent years, because of Darwin Quintero's emergence in Minnesota. Molino got pushed to the side, but Kevin Molino's a favorite of Adrian Heath going back to the Orlando City USL days. And 2 goals here. Amarilla gets the other. He gave up a penalty. Aiko Para with a soft penalty given up, but it's a penalty. Valeri puts it away, but Minnesota was composed. Minnesota looked like a team that had self-belief, and Minnesota looks like a team that you got to watch in the Western Conference.
Yeah, and then on the flip side, I was going to ask you about Portland defensively with a back of Morera, Mabiala, Zaparich, and Villafana, and what you thought about them defensively as they were trying to stop Minnesota in this match.
Well, I think the back 6, you include Diego Chara, you include Christian Paredes. There's talent, but Zaparich is new. This is his first match in MLS. Morera is very good going forward. Villafana is another year older. Diego Chara is another year older. Go a little bit higher in the team. Diego Valeri, another year older. Sebastian Blanco, another year older. It's getting to a point with the Timbers that you're going to have to find some young emerging players to give a spark. And you're going to need them on both sides. You're going to need them defensively. You're going to need players to come in and give you something. Dairon Asprilla has just been around and around and around and never become the player that anybody expected. Jeremy Abobasi has to step up this year. You're going to have to get some performances out of Marco Farfan on the left side, Eric Williamson in the middle. The Timbers should be better. And at this point, I'm struggling to figure out why it is, other than age, other than it's not the right combination. And if the Timbers don't improve from what we saw in the second half of last season, with all the home games that they did not dominate their schedule, and what we saw here, you've got to ask some big questions. Is it Giovanni Savarese? Is it the front office? Is it the player recruitment? Is it just the end of this group and it's time to start moving on? They brought Valeri back. You can say good or bad on that. We'll know, as the year goes on. But Minnesota came in and just looked like the better team with very few questions about it. And that's not what you expect at Providence Park. It's just not. And Portland does not look like Portland, and they haven't looked like Portland in quite a while at this point.
So then, now that we've gone through all the matches, save Atlanta and Nashville, and we've got folks on the timeline we can get into in hour number 2, obviously. Biggest surprise, biggest disappointment from week 1?
Biggest surprise, I think, is Minnesota. I think to just look that good in week 1 on the road, that's pretty impressive. That's pretty impressive. Biggest disappointment, I think most would say DC. I've had questions about them. I haven't ranked them as high as a lot of people. It's still disappointing to lose at home in the way they did, and I thought just be played off the park in the final 30 minutes at home. That's one that stands out to me. Not from a any other perspective as just a red card in the second minute between Columbus and New York City. I would have liked to have seen that match at full strength and see what, really get a better sense of those two teams. And we didn't get that. Florian Valot is a big surprise with the Red Bulls. He had 2 assists. He's a player who's had just awful luck with ACL injuries. He's missed most of the last 2 seasons with it. If he can become the true playmaker for that team and Kaku becomes more of a floater who can get goals and get assists, maybe the Red Bulls can make up for some of their losses. I still think they're a little just – they're not as good as the rest of the teams around them. But can their system, can their style of play make up the gap? We'll find out, and it'll be a big test of what Red Bull soccer is. Other disappointments, Vancouver just not really being anything different than they were last year. Really no progression from them. That's about it. Chicago was a little bit of a surprise in how good they looked. They're not complete yet. Sporting Kansas City, I expected them to be good. That was really good. It was also against Vancouver. So lots of different things in week 1, lots of interesting elements to it. But we look ahead at this upcoming weekend and some of the matchups that jump off the page. It starts with New England and Chicago. New England's, got to make, I think, more of a statement than they did in week 1 in Montreal. That felt a little flat from them. RSL hosting Red Bulls. You're looking for progression from both. You want to see how RSL handles the Red Bulls press. Dallas hosting Montreal. The Impact, are preparing for CONCACAF Champions League. They're a little thin. Do they kind of punt here? I wonder if they might. DC hosting Miami is an intriguing one at 3:30 on Saturday because DC looked bad at home. They're at home again. Miami looked a little bit better than expected without, their stud number 9 yet. Can Miami go into DC and get their first win? I'm not ruling it out. Toronto, NYC could be a lot of fun. Weather could be bad in Toronto, so that could make it even more interesting. NYC is preparing for CONCACAF Champions League, so maybe they rotate and we don't see them at full strength. Atlanta, Cincinnati's the 7 o'clock on Saturday. We got plenty of time to talk about that one. San Jose, Minnesota. That's the 8 o'clock match on Saturday night. That could be really interesting. Probably go over on it. That could be a fun one. Minnesota had 3 goals on the road last week. San Jose had 2 goals at home, fighting back to get a draw. That could be a crazy match. Kansas City, Houston. You would expect Kansas City at home to be a pretty prohibitive favorite there. Colorado, Orlando in Colorado. I think the Rapids are going to be a pretty big favorite. Galaxy, Vancouver, 10 o'clock on Saturday night. Another one where the home team should be a huge favorite. It's an interesting week coming up. Very interesting week coming up.
Yeah, you look at Vancouver and Galaxy. I just the word that popped into my head was buzzsaw for Vancouver going into the Galaxy. And Sporting in Houston. I looked at that one. San Jose, Minnesota jumps off the page immediately. Then you wonder about the teams, like you said, preparing for CONCACAF Champions League. Do they rotate things around? Do they come in at something akin to a starting 11, or is it a little different for NYCFC in Montreal? And Miami, what can Miami do against DC United? You mentioned what you would do to DC United's lineup earlier in the hour.
No, I don't know what I'd do because they don't have a right back. They don't have one.
I was just saying where you would switch Gressel and Flores is what I was talking about.
Sure, and you still don't have a right back. So that's just it's a more minor thing. Gressel in the middle is not as effective, but Doesn't matter where you put him if you don't have a right back. You're going to get hurt defensively if you don't have a right back, and I just don't think Russell Canals is that. He's better in the midfield, so you've hurt two sections. They have to go get a right back. I can't believe they haven't done it.
And so, you look at the absences of DC and the promise of Miami, and you see those two ideas coming to a head. But, and then RSL and Red Bulls growing from week number one. Are we going to see more of the same? And are we going to continue to see, Florian Velo with his small sample size? I hope he stays healthy for a full season. And then, New England and Chicago coming off of their first weekends. New England, you have an anticipation of expecting more from them. And Chicago, who are you and who are you going to continue to be? So, a lot of intriguing matchups in week number 2. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, there's 2 matches on Sunday. Portland hosting Nashville. That will be interesting with Nashville on the road. Can they get enough of an attack to threaten a Timbers team that I think you have to look at as shaky at the moment? And the late game on Sunday night, LAFC hosting Philadelphia. You do have to wonder about LA and what they field lineup-wise with CONCACAF looming. If they're not full strength, Philadelphia can take advantage of it. The Union played LAFC very tough last year. Can they do it again at Bank of California? We'll find out. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to get Jessica Charman on the line after this, talk about Atlanta and Nashville and her experience in the stands at Nissan Stadium. We'll be right back after this.
A ranger station.
I'd like to report a bear hug.
Okay.
I put out my campfire and Smokey Bear hugged me.
So you drowned the fire, you stirred it, drowned it again, and felt that it was cold?
Uh-huh.
Yep, he's just letting you know you did good.
Bear hug from Smokey Bear. Status update.
I'm gonna let you go now. There are many ways to start a fire, but one sure way to put it out. Learn how you can do your part at SmokeyBear.com.
Sponsored by the U.S. Forest Service Ad Council and your state forester.
As a business owner, you know that every year brings new challenges and opportunities. The success of your business demands expertise and focus. And Country Financial can help you keep that focus by helping ensure you have the right insurance protection in place to meet your goals. Jason Wright can help you create a customized insurance plan that has coverages designed just for your business. Give Jason a call at 678-568-6871 or reach him on Facebook at Jason Wright Agency. Coverages vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
This is what matters. This is beyond X's and O's. This is the difference mutual respect makes. This is what character looks like. This is what defines us in Georgia. This is sportsmanship. School sports. It's not the outcome that matters most, but the way the games are played. This message presented by the Georgia High School Association and the Georgia Athletic Directors Association.
If you've been hurt in a car wreck, contact my friend Steve Apolinski of Apolinski and Associates. He's been representing individuals for over 30 years throughout Georgia and Alabama. Email him at steve@aa-legal.com or call him 24/7 at 404-377-9191. The initial consultation is free.
You're listening to Soccer Down Here daily on SDH Networks, a division of OSG Sports. Find us at Soccer Down Here on Facebook and Twitter. The time is now the top of the hour. Peep, y'all.
Welcome back. Hour number 2, Soccer Down Here, March 3rd. It's a Tuesday Thoughts edition of the show, so share your Tuesday thoughts with us on Twitter at Soccer Down Here. If you have some Tuesday thoughts for Jessica Charman, you can make sure to tweet her at Jess Talks Footy with an IE, or you can just listen to what she says right now.
Which is going to be great stuff, Jason. It always is.
Wow. Okay, coming in confident. All right.
Confidence.
I like it.
Hey, I got to believe what I'm saying.
Okay, fair enough. You got to sell it. Have you thawed out from Nissan Stadium on Saturday night yet?
Just about. I swear, I was trying to tweet with frozen hands. So any spelling or grammatical errors, that wasn't my fault. It was the fact that I was icicle fingered.
Or gloveless.
Yes. Foolish on my part.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of gloves. My hands went about early in the second half. Everything else was good. I'd layered up. I felt good about my preparation. And then, yeah, it was just gone. It got a lot colder than I expected.
I should have learned my lesson. It was that cold at the She Believes Cup in 2019. But every time I'm like, I have English blood. I should stay warm, but I don't. I do not.
What do you think about the match? Nashville put on a good performance and made it difficult. Atlanta gets the 3 points. We'll get into the aftermath of it, but just the way the match played out, what did you think?
I'll be real. I think it was pretty much how I predicted it. I know I got the score prediction right this time around, so just a little name drop there on the prediction table.
Confidence is coming from.
Oh, yeah. Bailey Daly just nailed it.
But, yeah, as I predicted, I thought Nashville were going to come out a little quicker than they did. I was surprised Atlanta got on the board so early. I always saw them scoring, and it was a disappointing goal, in my opinion, to let up. I was a little confused over the free kick decision. It happened right in front of me. I thought Mulroney was actually the one that got pulled back, but once you have a free kick like that given against you, you have to defend better. I thought the matchups defensively, we need to look at that because there was no like-for-like defending from that set play. You don't match. And obviously, Joseph, it breaks my heart saying it. He won't be marking anyone else in the box anytime soon, but it was a weird one for me that Joseph would be marking Zimmerman. You usually put your biggest centre-back with one of their biggest aerial threats, so that was an odd one for me. We came back strong. We scored some beautiful goals, responded well, but obviously there's one big thing hanging over and kind of undermining our win a little bit, and that's, of course, the injury to Joseph Martinez.
So, you mentioned what it was like for the match itself. I know that you got there early, as evidenced by all of our back and forth when we all got there. But from an atmospheric perspective, before your hands froze, what was it like to see the Atlanta United fans coming out in as much of a force as they were, and the Nashville fans for their day in history?
Yeah, it was incredible. Fair play to all the Atlanta United fans. There was a lot of people talking about going. I was expecting a good crowd. I wasn't expecting that much of a crowd and that significant noise that the Atlanta United fans were making. I mean, it could have been a home game almost with the volume that was being put out there by the Atlanta United fans. I thought Nashville did themselves proud still. Their supporters section was nice, and I would say one half of the stadium was definitely yellow, but at least probably 40 to 50% was Atlanta United fans, but there was real good relations between the two. It wasn't at all negative, the relations between the two types of fans. Everyone was celebrating together, and I thought that was what made it a really special moment. And as I tweeted on the day, it felt a privilege as an Atlanta United fan to be a part of Nashville's moment as well. It really brought back memories of my first game at Bobby Dodd and our season opener, and it was similar in the fact that the teams played well. Atlanta United played well in their season opener. Of course, they didn't get the result they wanted at home, and it was similar with Nashville. And hopefully the fans had a great experience and they'll be back. And I don't see many fans bringing as many away fans to the Nissan Stadium. So hopefully Nashville will be able to get that extra man home advantage more often this season.
Cincinnati might put forth an effort for this. There's a little bit of a rivalry there. That'll be fun to see. But I like picking your brain about these sorts of things. So we know that game day presentation's a little bit different in the U.S. What did you think of just the presentation in Nashville for their first?
I mean, the free music concert was cool, right? I didn't grow up in a time where I knew of Judah and the Lion, but a few people were fans, so I thought that was cool. I did think their graphic and media team did a really good job. I thought the hype videos that were... I got goosebumps, but with the UN video, and that wasn't even a team that really has any connection to myself. So I thought that was a great job by the social media team. Same old with the national anthem. It's still an odd one. I have to get used to the national anthem being played at every single game, but it's a great American tradition. And that was honestly one of my favorite renditions of the national anthem. It doesn't get more country than that. And that's what I like. I'm okay with the national anthem being played before every game. I get that America's a very patriotic country, but it gets, I have to mix my words politely here. It gets it gets repetitive at times if it's done in exactly the same style. Or, let's be honest, Atlanta United has that Amanda lady nearly every game. So you get used to hearing her voice. She's brilliant, but it gets repetitive. So to have such an amazing, different rendition, that was cool to me. And with Nashville, I think they did the right thing. They're playing off, and it's okay when you're so famous as Nashville is for country music to sort of play off that and have that identity. And I thought that was really special. And I hope they continue to do that with the music riffs, with different country artists coming to sing the national anthem, and getting soccer out there and utilizing the famous people that you do have in your city to promote your team, because they need that. Obviously, it's a growing team. They didn't have as many fans maybe as they would have liked to. So it's a good way to build your fan base and spread the word of soccer in your city when you have famous people to appear at the games. Get them hooked.
There's a question that popped up on our timeline this morning, and I'll go ahead and ask it to both of you. And the question was that because so many fans came from Atlanta to watch Nashville's debut, do you think it will hurt Nashville because of so many visitors coming and keep Nashville fans away?
No,
or
that makes
will
no
it
sense.
detract from the overall?
No, that makes no sense. Why would Nashville fans, when they see a bunch of red and black, say, we're not going to go next time? It makes no sense. I think, if anything, it's going to be...
reverse effect.
Yeah, I think it's going to say, we don't want that to happen again.
Yeah, exactly. They almost get frustrated and annoyed. And I know the couple of people I sat next to, you know, they were like, we feel outnumbered. They're going to talk to their friends. They're going to talk to their people. Hey, this was a cool experience, but it'll be even cooler when we do have that home advantage. And honestly, it was always going to be this way when this was the schedule was released. It was Atlanta United's first game of the season. A lot of people had missed MLS. They were always going to bring a crowd. And then the fact it was so close to home. But Nashville, it's hard to build up your crowd early on. And I think as more people watch the game, more people see the style of play they played, I thought they did well. I thought it was a fun match to watch. So hopefully that's going to, in fact, create more of a home fan base. But I don't think it had a negative effect. And I was very proud of the way that a lot of Atlanta United fans conducted themselves. So there was no disrespect from Atlanta United. And as many people shared my sentiment of feeling privileged and honored to be a part of their first day. And we were happy for them, but we just weren't going to give them 3 points on the day.
Yeah, Rich Ransom. Yeah, I found the full tweet. Rich asks, "Does 10,000 Atlanta fans at Nashville actually hurt their attendance? The opener is one thing, but will Nashville be consistent, knowing their city only comes out during the playoffs?" And yes, Rich, we do have some scarves left.
Yeah, that's a little bit different of a conversation. Even if, and I don't know what the final number is for Atlanta fans in Nashville. Go up to 15 if you want to go on the high end. I think that would be on the high end. I think the noise was maybe a little more equal, but Nashville fans got louder as the night went on, which is to be expected. I think the same thing happened here in Atlanta in Game 1. But take the 15,000 out of it. That's still an amazing turnout for Nashville soccer. And is everybody going to be back next time? No, this was a big event. But are they going to be able to draw in that 20 to 30,000 range on a regular basis? I think so. And I think that's a good spot to be. I think that's completely fine. I don't know why there's shade about a lot of Atlanta fans and Nashville still, as a whole, drawing 59,000. It's still 59,000. That's pretty good.
And both teams in the South, we should be proud as the South that, two teams drew that audience, and they'll continue to come. But one thing I was wondering is it like Atlanta United? Are they going to close off the top tier of the stadium? Because I think that would help them create a better atmosphere. The crowd
I think
was
on a regular
spread.
They will. I think
on the regular. I think that's
spread.
37 to do the lower bowl.
I think that would be perfect. If they have the lower bowl and they can fill that or get that almost filled, that stadium can have a fantastic atmosphere as long as people are staying warm.
I've been to games like that. Trinidad Tobago World Cup qualifier was just the lower bowl, and it was full, and everybody stood the whole time, and it was really loud. It was really good. It was a good atmosphere. Do that, and then you can open up sections in the top as you sell, as you need to. But yeah, I think 30,000 a game for Nashville this season is an absolute realistic goal and a good one. I think that'd be a good performance.
Jess, you've got the first match done, and I know that your mind is going to be elsewhere later this afternoon because you have Reading in the FA Cup, and we know that is first and foremost part of your focus. But when you look at FC Cincinnati coming in, what sticks out for you for Atlanta United as FC Cincinnati comes to town? And it's going to be 70,000 of our closest friends here for this one. What's early in your brain for this match?
For me, it's how we adapt and how we respond to obviously losing Joseph Martinez and the other injury concerns that we got over the weekend. It's how we rebuild from that. It's a huge loss. There's been so much work on the formation and focusing on that PBJ combination, as you guys called it, and that's going to be a problem. And it's about getting our fans to be as positive as possible about it. It's a tough break for everyone on the team, on the staff, on the fan base, and we have to respond positively to losing a player for a potentially, from my experience of ACLs, a season-ending injury. But that being said, I have faith in the team. I have faith in the squad. Obviously, we're going to be expected making a signing, but I actually really liked how Jan offered a different dimension when he came on. He had some good hold-up play, so I'm not too worried about it. I think it being the first game of the Benz is going to have, and I use that cliche again, the 12th man advantage, because there's just nothing like a sellout stadium, and I'm sure Cincinnati will bring some fans, but there's nothing like red, black, and gold in the full sellout Mercedes-Benz. So I think we'll be okay, but it's going to be a lot tougher, and obviously we're going to be prepping for this game much differently to what Frank de Boer or any of the staff would have liked to have been prepping for it with.
I want to get your thoughts on a player that we all saw last season with Atlanta United too, who came on unexpectedly for the second half, Lawrence Wyke, in his MLS debut.
I thought he did fantastically. I was nervous about Wyke. What I'd seen of him in the preseason, I wasn't as impressed with him as I had been in the twos, but he responded fantastically to adversity. He'd signed like a 3-day contract, was it? Ahead of the time. It was a really short-term contract, whatever it was.
The temporary injury relief contract.
And so mentally, he was preparing to sit on that bench and be a sub. He wasn't preparing most likely to be played. Obviously, in the back of your mind, you're always wondering what if, but it's kind of like a goalkeeper when they go on the bench. As a centre-back or a defender, you're not expecting to have to play some big minutes, and let alone a whole second half. But he was brilliant to me. I thought he showed composure. I thought he showed more maturity. He worked well. And I think that's what happens when you have a player like Meza in the middle, though. He gives that stability, that leadership, that maturity that helped him thrive. And I thought he had a couple of great plays, some good link-up passes, and he was confident and good in the air. And for a young player, that's great to have. And you have to wonder whether Atlanta United will now be looking at signing him on, depending on the injury, and if he's able to, upgrading him onto that full-time first-team contract.
Then you've got a guy like Jake Mulroney, who last time we checked is quite fast and is still quite fast. What did you think of Jake out on the left-hand side? And
Yeah,
then
I thought he had a better game. I hadn't been overly impressed with some of the stuff I had seen of him in past matchups. I thought that was the best game I've watched from him. He seemed a lot stronger, more physical, which is good, and he's growing into his minutes. It takes time. We have to remember that, you're new. It's a new squad, new team, new playing style potentially, but I like the way he crosses the ball. He has good variety on his distribution, and he often looks for that chipped floaty one to the back post, and it's always putting it in a dangerous area. And what I think is best about his crossing ability is he really is finding the spot that makes it hard for goalkeeper and defender. He's playing in that middle ground where neither of them really wants to come for it. And I noticed on multiple occasions for the Nashville defensive line, it caused all sorts of problems for them in terms of communication with the back line. And that's when you capitalize on it, when you have a big man in the box. The one thing I like to see, and again, in this term, in the game, it sort of had a negative effect, but Mulroney was playing more physically defensively. He was being stronger. We've seen him be a little bit soft in the challenge, but he was strong in a battle, and it was obviously his foul, which, again, I mentioned, I don't think was a foul on him. I think he was fouled first, but it was his foul that led to the goal. But you like to see your midfielders giving away those sorts of fouls. Usually it's good that they're letting their name be out there, giving them, the opposition something to remember them by. So I liked his performance. I think he did a lot better.
So now Atlanta comes back home to face Cincinnati, who had a kind of all-over-the-place performance in Week 1 and a 3-2 loss at Red Bull Arena. But Atlanta's got to figure something out without Joseph Martinez. Right now, without a new player coming in for Saturday, because I think that would be quick unless you're making a trade within the league. What do you think Frank de Boer opts to do? Is it Adam John? Is it Pity Martinez in a false 9? What are you thinking?
I think John would have put more questions in Frank de Boer's head, because I think when he came on, he played well as far as I'm concerned. He looked like he offered something different. He was quick, he was physical, and his hold-up play was good. So whichever one Frank de Boer goes with, I think after seeing John get those minutes, he's going to feel better about having those options. We hadn't seen much of John. He hadn't given us that much of anything for Atlanta United so far. So to see him get those strong minutes. And I just want to say what a great player for fans John's turned into right now. His interaction on social media, if anyone follows him, has been absolutely brilliant with fans. And I love to see that from players who aren't forgetting their roots and are learning that, you know what, I did have some disdain from Atlanta United fans possibly, but he's working to build all that relationship back up, and his social media has been fantastic when it comes to involving fans with the team.
When you look at we went through all of the other matchups in the first hour. I don't know how much you've had the chance to look at the rest of Week 1, but is there anything else that stood out to you when it came to the other teams that went at it in Week 1?
I'll be realistic. I didn't get much time to watch any of the games, but we haven't talked about the big goalkeeper moment in the game, guys. In our game. I'm like, you can't leave me hanging on this one. I've got to get that out, guys.
All right, let's hear it.
Go for it.
Okay, so I was completely baffled in the moment, but in absolute hysterics and with a huge smile on my face. Like I said on Twitter, that was one of my most favorite moments of the game. I think the goalkeeper did the right thing as a goalkeeper. He reacted to the shot and he took a risk. When goalkeepers get in these positions, their only mindset is that they've got to stop the goal in any way. And in his mind, as much as you're not thinking about the next game and being suspended, it's better to take that risk and make the save and make the reaction and potentially get away with it. And he got away with it. I did read Howard Webb's explanation. I thought that was something that I haven't heard of before in terms of DOGSO. It did make sense to an extent. When you watch it back, I guess there are recovering defenders that might make it. But for me, the velocity that Barco had on the ball, surely it was going in. So it was a shock, but I'm not going to say I was mad about it, because if it had been between us winning or losing the game, I would have been more frustrated. But for me, it's always going to be team goalkeeper if it's not going to change the amount of points.
That's where it comes out.
It's a risk.
Goalkeepers union.
Exactly. It's a real thing. But honestly, it's a risk and it paid off. I think he was expecting a red card. But what I loved was, if anyone watches it back, he heads back to his goal after doing it. He's almost telling the ref, hey, you're not going to send me off here.
Goalkeepers always do that. You're trying to just get back into place. Oh, no, nothing's wrong. No, I didn't.
I'm surprised he didn't hold his head or something and act like it hit him in the face. That's most goalkeepers' tactic. If it hits you in the hand outside the box, it was my face. It was my face. But I thought it was a brilliant moment. It's definitely created some debates in terms of DOGSO and what an opportunity is about, because from Howard Webb's explanation, it has to be a clear and obvious opportunity, which has to be certain. And that's not obvious to me. Obvious and certain aren't synonyms. So that's what I found a little bit confusing.
He took it to a different level. And this is something I'd never seen in a DOGSO conversation, because I've never seen this type of scenario play out. You see one on the edge of the 18, this 45 yards from goal. I honestly can't remember a time I've ever seen anything like it. And Howard Webb went beyond denying an obvious goal-scoring opportunity. He said the opportunity was taken. It was a shot. So you're not even in the DOGSO realm in a lot of ways. You're taking that next step to, did he keep a goal from being scored by committing it? And I guess now the precedent has been set, at least in MLS, that if you're not 100% certain that a player has kept a goal from being scored after the opportunity's taken, well, it's just a yellow. I don't know if that's a good precedent to set.
I don't think so, because particularly from these distances, it's never going to be guaranteed. Even from 20 yards out, it's not guaranteed. The only ones we're looking at that are guaranteed is when a player makes a diving save on the goal line.
Luis Suarez or something.
Exactly. Those are the only ones you can be sure of at this point. Even when a goalkeeper's outside his 18-yard box, can you really tell that it was going in from that angle? Probably not. So, I mean, it's a ruling that's potentially in favor of goalkeepers, but let's be honest here. We don't want obvious cheating, and I've seen a lot of funny tweets that make me laugh about how they're talking about, well, now the goalkeeper can deliberately come out the box and handle it. No goalkeeper wants to put themselves in that position. We basically get nosebleeds as soon as we're outside of 20 yards up the pitch. Like it's not in our genetics, but I do think that this was one that is going to be shown all over the world. I'm sure that it's already reached England and people are seeing it and making comments, and it's something we're going to have to look at when it comes to consistency with refereeing, because if Pro is speaking and if Howard Webb is giving this description and that he's the one training the referees, this is something that, as rare as these situations are, there should be some consistency over. So, like you say, Jason, I don't think I've ever seen anything like it. The closest to seeing anything like it would probably be if a goalkeeper comes up for a corner and then is recovering, but it was an unusual but beautiful moment for me. I found it very entertaining. I will say that.
It was absolutely ridiculous.
But it was a red.
I'm going with a yellow.
Of course you're going with the yellow.
Uh-huh.
I think
recovering defender.
But now, if you're a field player, because goalkeeper out of the 18, they're a field player. They're just like everybody else. If you're in a situation like that, put your hand up, block it down, and then you're going to be making the argument. Well, that wasn't on goal. No, it wasn't on goal.
Forgiveness later instead of permission now.
I don't think a field player reacts quick enough and gets his hands up as quickly as the goalkeeper does.
Probably not.
It's not as easy as you think to get your hands above your head in that split second. So I'm saying it was a great reaction save. If he'd have done that inside the box, everyone would have been praising him.
That's some spin. I like it. Is that the official goalkeepers union
45 yards
statement?
off outside of the box?
Exactly. Practice makes perfect.
Okay. All right. Let's see how it is.
Mm-hmm. Hashtag GK Union.
Always the GK Union.
Okay. Wow.
See what happens when we have a goalkeeper situation. I think probably we should just find the situation from the week, and it just so happened to be the Atlanta United Nashville game, the most questionable goalkeeping situation every single week, and get the hashtag GK Union perspective on it.
I'm 100%. If anyone watches a game and they see a goalkeeper moment, I would love to be tweeted all the goalkeeper moments to comment on, because I will put a spin on it that you never thought possible.
No. I wouldn't call it a spin. I would the way that I would.
I would call it a spin.
I would refer to it as creative interpretation. How about that?
I'll take that, John. I will definitely take
John, it's a spin. Stop.
The creative interpretation of this particular act that we saw on the pitch equals X.
No, it's how can I bail the goalkeeper out of this?
No doubt. Like I said, from Jess's perspective, you have to come up with something other than the word spin. We can say spin, you and I can, because we're not a part of the goalkeeper union. But Jess has to come up with different phraseology so it can sit there. So she's not using the word spin. It has to be something different that she has to use to sit there and promote goalkeeper union solidarity. You and I can say spin. She has to come up with something different. That's why I was saying creative interpretation.
I think you're giving the goalkeepers union more credit. They don't mind completely
No,
spinning.
we're okay with it. We know we're a unique entity. No one will ever understand what it's like to be a goalkeeper until they play 90 minutes in a net, having balls whacked at their face and trying to stop them hitting it.
See, now, and as a goalkeeper, you would think that Jess would remember her gloves for a cold situation as a civilian watching a match. You would think as a where the gloves should always be there. I would think that you would have your gloves, as a part of your either your clear purse or on your person or something like that. Have them ready at a moment's notice. in cold temperatures, but no, you left them behind.
I just failed the GK Union.
I think that's a demerit.
No, I think you're
demerit and
spinning. No, you want it back with your spinning of saying that should have been a yellow and it was all okay and it was a great reaction save.
Okay.
So you're okay.
As long as I keep my card, I'm okay.
Yeah, you kept the card with that. All right, we will see what crazy goalkeeper hijinks happen this week in MLS or USL Championship, because the USL Championship kicks off this weekend as well. Atlanta United 2 on Sunday. So I'm sure we'll have something ridiculous for Jess to spin us on next week.
Absolutely. Can't wait for that.
Thank you for joining us. I'm glad you thawed out. Glad you enjoyed Nashville, and we'll talk to you next week.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys.
Be good.
All right. We've got lots of Tuesday thoughts to get to on the show. What do we have on Twitter right now, John?
Well, first and foremost, we were alerted that we actually missed a game.
We missed a game. What game did we miss?
Seattle and Columbus, the late game on Saturday night.
Oh, yeah. MLS's website was kind of stupid with their schedule. I'm very disappointed because when it got to the end of Galaxy Vancouver with the scroll up at the top of the main page and you hit next, it skipped all the way to next week. So it skipped the Sunday games and it skipped this game. So Seattle and Columbus on Saturday night. Sounders don't have CONCACAF, so they don't have to rest people. Columbus is a team that needs a statement win on the road, and I think they could potentially get it against a Seattle team that wasn't really all that convincing. So that's maybe one of the more intriguing matches of the weekend. Like San Jose, Minnesota, I think will be fun and wild and crazy. Seattle, Columbus, I don't know if it'll be high scoring, but I think it'll be one of the more interesting matchups of the weekend.
Yeah, and once again, I just keep looking at the issues at the back for Seattle and how or if they're going to be addressed. What's the 11 going to look like, especially there at the back with Columbus and Zelarayan and the firepower there. So that's how I'm looking at Seattle and Columbus. The Palace intrigue is right there with it for this one as well.
Yeah, but MLSsoccer.com, you have this week's scores, and the final game on the right side is Portland, Minnesota. You click the arrow, and you get all the games on Saturday. The last game on the right side is LA Galaxy, Vancouver. You click the arrow, and, now it got fixed.
Go to the 14th.
So they want to show me up. All right.
Okay.
Good job, guys. It didn't work before, so that's why we skipped it. Sorry, Seattle, Columbus. We apologize.
Okay. So
you're good now.
Now we have
MLSsoccer.com. You are good. And let's hear Tuesday thoughts.
All right. Daniel Fort has a bit of a thread here, so we'll try to get through it quickly. He says, defense wins championships, and then he repeated that in all caps. He says, let Frank flex his tactical muscles and employ the system they need to win. I feel like the system may look a little more conservative with the Joseph injury, but don't think the overall results will suffer. He says, look at, NFL reference, the 85 Bears and the 86 Giants. Shout out Lawrence Taylor. The greatest defenses ever were responsible for the championships of their teams. If Miles and the overall backline stay strong, there's no reason Atlanta can't compete at the highest level. I'll stop there. There's more.
Yeah, I mean, if you have a strong defense, you're going to be in contention to win things, flat out. I don't think this will be a defense-first team, even with Joseph Martinez out. I don't think they're going to become a 5-3-2 or 5-4-1 kind of setup. I think you're going to play in the same shape. But, yeah, this is a team that's built to have some pragmatism in it. It's a team that is built to respond to what the opponent's doing. The wingbacks can sit deeper if needed. The two central midfielders can sit a little deeper if needed. You can defend with 7 and attack with 3. I don't think the tactics change as much as you might think, but do you risk as much with bombing players forward? Maybe not, because you're not going to be quite as productive in the attack. Now, this is all depending on who comes in. If there's a player that comes in to replace Joseph Martinez, I think that would be the safer play as opposed to the opposite, which logically you could see as well. A team saying, well, we're not going to produce as much going forward, so we need to get more numbers forward to support because we don't have Joseph Martinez. I think it will be a little more of let's keep organized, let's keep the shape, and let's play to the strengths that we have at this point. And if it's Adam John, you're probably going to see a number of crosses. You're probably going to see a little more direct play, skipping the lines, and trying to have that element of John knocking the ball down, bringing in Barco and Pitti into the play there. If it's Pitti Martinez as a number 9 and going more false 9, then you're going to build up play more, especially through the middle. You're going to have more interplay and movement between Barco, Pitti, Rossetto, and trying to draw defenders out and create space in behind. This is a team that's being built to win in a variety of ways, and that will be really useful with this situation with not having the best striker in the league. So you're going to have to find other ways to win, and I think the team was already being built to go into that direction. So not defensive. I don't think they're going to turn into a defensive team, a defend-first team. I think they're going to lean in more to that want to control matches, and specifically control matches through possession to create chances.
Daniel says, I say, trust in the front office. Let them do what they've been doing, and Frank will carry us through and not doom and gloom this 2020 season. There's still a lot of talent. Now, all the other assets of the Atlanta United front office, scouting, transfers, or player development will now show. I think during this trying time, Frank will, in a way, tell fans to, quote, sit down and relax. I got this. Let's see what happens before jumping to conclusions. Give the entire staff some time. The sky is not falling, amigos, and Atlanta United should have included the long shoe and Mike Conti call in the handball non-red card because that was radio gold.
Yeah, we were kind of losing our minds. It happens. It probably happens on a game-by-game basis, but, we do what we do. I don't think this is a situation that any manager wants to have, but if you're a manager who thinks about the game like Frank de Boer, there are exciting elements of it because you have to solve a problem now. And any team that loses its top scorer has a problem. And you've got to find a way to find goals from different places and not lose any of the other elements that have been good so far in competitive action. So how can you replace Joseph Martinez's production? There are a lot of people getting bent out of shape about words. Look, you're not going to replace Joseph Martinez. We can stop worrying about that. But somebody's got to play the position, and somebody's got to score goals. So, yes, you are going to try to replace Joseph Martinez. We all get what's going on here. So how you do that, is it going to be one way? Is it going to be different ways for different opponents? Is it going to evolve? We'll have to see. But the key for Frank in putting this together is making sure that this team keeps its organization that has been very good so far. You don't want to lose that element and try to do too much to replace Joseph. You want to trust in Adam John and what he brings to the table. It's why you recruited him. You want to trust in Pitti Martinez if he is in that role, or anybody else you add, because you want to keep a backline that is good, even with different pieces so far this year. You want to keep the wing play that is growing, and you want to keep a midfield box because you can look at it in that way with 2 attacking, 2 defending. That's worked pretty well. We talked about Montreal using that kind of shape. You can use that shape, and you can use it with a player like a Pitti Martinez in a false 9 or an Adam John in a big number 9, or you can go look for speed to replace some of what Joseph Martinez gave you. You've got different ways to solve the problem. That ability to solve the problem and the process of creating the plan to solve the problem, that's where Frank de Boer is going to have an opportunity to show what he's all about in 2020.
Will Palmer's just catching up. And he says he was listening to yesterday's show on the way into work. So his hashtag Overreaction Monday on Tuesday thoughts. He says, guys, I got it. Put Alec Cannon in net, put Brad Gazan in as the 9, done.
No. Sorry. Not going to happen.
Joey Logan this morning in promoting the games of the week that are coming up later this afternoon. He says he hopes Roswell and Parkview get to play today. with turf. Being a Brookwood Bronco, my distaste for Panthers is still there, and Hornets beat us in football my senior year. Two great programs. Much respect to boys coach Clinnect at Parkview.
All right, so we're going to take a quick look at this. I think we're going to be good. It looks like it's actually dropped off to where very little chance of rain later. So should be some soccer on the turf in Roswell later today. And, yeah, it's two of the big programs in the state on the boys and girls side. So should be fun. You can listen on the SDH app. You can listen on soccerdownhere.net starting just before 6 o'clock in the girls' game. Boys' game will be immediately following. Or come out to Roswell and watch some good high school soccer tonight.
Joe Bost is actually thinking of doing that. He says he may try to swing by this evening and see the SDH guys.
Well, it looks like the weather's going to cooperate, Joe, so we will see you in Roswell.
Chris Hutchison, do players/clubs carry insurance in case of potential career-ending injuries, such as that ACL tear that Joseph has suffered?
Yeah, typically. I don't know all the process behind it, but you hear about these things coming up all the time. I would caution about saying potentially career-ending injury. We mentioned Florian Velo earlier. He had an ACL injury in 2018, an ACL injury in 2019, and he's back. I think with the way that modern science is in these things, it's very rarely a career-ending injury. I think that's incredibly rare. Back in the day, maybe. Now, not so much. And I don't think there's any expectation of that being the case here. But, yeah, clubs and players generally do have different insurance policies and these sorts of things.
Michael Head, two trivia things that don't really matter in light of number 7. Another great road trip experience on Saturday and a backslap to all my fellow road trippers. As an Auburn grad, War Eagle unites us, especially in faraway places. I know Go Dogs does the same. We need an Atlanta United equivalent.
Do we? I mean, I think people just are kind of making it up as they go. They see people in Atlanta United gear and they're saying hello. I don't know if that's needed. I mean, yelling something at people, is it really needed? It's okay. I mean, it's cool. It happens. But is it a must?
Bartimus Prime this morning has Tuesday thoughts using the hashtag. He says, 5 takes on the 5 stripes.
Okay.
Number 1, great keeping possession but unable to create many good chances in the final third. That's a holdover from last season.
A little bit, and it's early, too. And you're coming off of a midweek match, and you're playing up against a Nashville team that was really organized and really good. So it's early. I also think, too, the game state does play into it because you got the early goal. You got the go-ahead goal before halftime. Escobar goes out, Wyke is in, start second half. That probably draws you to be a little more conservative in the second half. Then the Joseph injury. That's a little bit of shell shock, and you get even more conservative. So I think the game state and the way it played out is part of it here. We'll have to see more games to see if it becomes a trend. But early on, I'm not really surprised by that in and of itself. With the way the game played out, I think it's less of a surprise.
Number 2, struggled to dispossess Nashville SC at times, allowing them too much possession.
I didn't really get that sense. I mean, struggling to dispossess, I think there probably needs to be a little bit more to that. I think Atlanta, as the night went on, dropped a little too deep at times, and that was more of the problem. I don't think you're really looking to go and be super aggressive flying into tackles, but there needs to be a little more confrontation higher up the field. And again, some of that could be down to the way the game played out on Saturday. But yeah, in general, I want to see the defense up a little bit higher. Don't want them to be crazy risky and going hard into tackles and overcommitting on trying to jump into passes, but it's a process. It's something that does need to get better over time. It didn't really stand out to me, though.
Number 3, Gazan in the back line kept and built possession really well.
Yeah, and that's a big important part of it. And to be able to do that with a change in the back line at halftime is even more impressive. It's key. I mean, I think the second goal showed what Atlanta United can do, building up attacks out of the back. It's a prime example of it. It was good in 2 different ways. I mean, you built up the attack from left to right, but also you saw Franco Escobar use his dribbling ability to eliminate a defender. And then his passing ability to put a ball in that Ezequiel Barco is able to do something with and get the opening goal. So you need more of that. There's different ways to build up attacks out of the back. I think Atlanta showed some of those different ways. Lawrence White with some line-splitting passes as the night went on. Good to see. It's a good performance in that realm. I agree.
4, the quality of crosses in the final third was not high, but the long diags were effective.
Yeah, the long diagonals were effective, and that's something a lot of people were worried about, this team losing with Leandro Gonzalez-Perez out. Lawrence White's got that in his locker. I think Franco Escobar's got it too. We just hadn't really seen as much of it. And Fernando Meza can do it as well. So when you've got 3 defenders, along with Brad Kazan, who is probably one of the better ones in the league at picking those spots out, you're going to be able to open the game up. Crosses... Yeah, I mean, I don't want to see this team become overly reliant on crosses. I think at times in previous years they did. That can be something that when you do it, it does need to be better. I think Mulraney especially needs to produce a little more in the final third. Lennon needs to produce a little more quickly in the final third. I think there's still just a little bit of hesitation figuring things out. For as much as anything for those two, it could be just a comfort level of understanding the runs, and now that's going to change because you're trying to time things with Joseph, who's not a typical number 9 by any stretch. And I think Lennon and Mulraney both were kind of hesitant, trying to get their head up to see where he was and what run he was making. If it's an Adam John, it's probably a little more traditional for those guys and the kinds of crosses they're playing in. If it's a Pity Martinez, you're probably not putting in as many crosses. And then it's what do you do with the wide play? You're probably looking at combination play to get in behind with Lennon and Mulraney's speed. So that's definitely something to watch as we go now, but it's going to take some time as well.
And the last thought from Bart, it's nice not to be scared a center back is going to hack a guy down for no reason now that Mesa's back there.
Mesa's just different. Yeah, he's just a different type of player. We know Escobar can get a little aggressive, and you got to have both. You got to have the balance. White can definitely be aggressive. Anton Walkes, I thought, was really good in this area too, in terms of just winning his tackles and making the right decisions when he did go into tackles. Mesa's just steady. Just super steady. Such a great addition, and I think for the way this team wants to play, absolutely the right center back on the back line.
Shiva this morning, after experiencing my first away match on Saturday, may I just say how lucky we are to have MBS as our venue. I'm a little disappointed that I paid $9 for a drink in a Titans souvenir cup.
That was one little thing. It's hard to do when it's not your venue. I think Atlanta did maybe the best job I've seen of this with what they did at Bobby Dodd, where it was Georgia Tech's venue, but when Atlanta United was there, it felt as much as it possibly could that it was Atlanta United's home too. Being in Minnesota at TCF Bank on the campus of University of Minnesota, it didn't feel like Minnesota United's home at all when we were there in 2018. Not at all. It was Minnesota stuff everywhere. Now, this was a little more in between, but yeah, there were lots of Titans things everywhere and really not much Nashville stuff. And that was a little disappointing because you're going to be there for 2 full years. So you would have thought that maybe like things like that, like a Nashville SC souvenir cup, Nashville SC signage in the concourses more. Those kinds of things. That's something that definitely needs a little bit of work. And if I'm going to, nitpick on Nashville and Nissan Stadium, that would be it. It's something that is a lower priority. I think they knocked most everything out of the park. But yeah, that was one where it didn't always feel like Nashville SC's home.
John Murray, hashtag Tuesday Thoughts. We still have a PB&J with Pity Barco and John, but we will also have PBR with Pity Barco and Husetsu. Joseph's probably having a fit with all the negativity going on.
Joseph's probably not worrying about it. And honestly, it's been less negative than I thought it would be. I thought it would get worse. It's you're losing a top player. The obvious, freak out is to be expected. I'm okay with that. I think as the week goes on, I want to see where it goes. It shouldn't get more negative. It should be the initial reaction is, oh no, what do we do? And then you start to work from there. We'll see. It's happened in any sport you can imagine. A top player goes down early in a season, and what do you make of it? What does the season become? There's no reason why the season can't be the same kind of season, because you do have time to replace and you do have different ways to replace. But it's a challenge because it was completely unexpected. So Joseph is probably just figuring out the next steps for him at the moment, and don't know when the surgery will be scheduled, but it will be soon. As soon as he's able to be operated on, they will do that, because that will accelerate the process for recovery. I think anything you get this season would be an absolute bonus. You can't expect anything. And on the team side, it's just figuring out what you're going to do in the short term and in the longer term. You're back to training today. What's the plan for Saturday? And does that plan help you get to Wednesday in Mexico? And I would assume that it would. Maybe before it wouldn't have. Now it's probably a little bit of a dress rehearsal in some ways and a tactical preparation for Club America. And we'll see how it goes. But Joseph is just probably anxious to get the surgery over with so he can start the recovery process. I have a feeling he is going to be a beast in the recovery process. And they're going to have to work to kind of hold him back and not let him go too far too fast with his recovery.
Right. Chris Hutchison seconded us, liking the rendition of the anthem on Saturday.
I thought it was great. I really thought that was great. It was the guitar accompaniment was very cool because it was different. I can't ever remember hearing an anthem like that. So it was unique. It was cool. I've heard Charles Eston's stuff from the Nashville TV show for a long time, and I've been impressed with. I'm impressed with anybody who can sing, period. But I'm impressed with a guy who was an actor and who was on Whose Line Is It Anyway, being able to create a country music career out of a TV show. That's pretty amazing. And he was really good. He was really good. The guitar was really good with it. I liked all the game day presentation. I thought the graphics after the goal were cool. It was very different. The whole idea
the album pressing
of cutting a record with the highlights for the man of the match. It's unique. It fits. The things that they did fit Nashville. And that's what you want to do in this situation. It's all about being authentic to your home. And that's pretty cool. So I think they nailed that stuff.
Ricky Ricardo, as we were talking about PBRs and PBJs, which sounds like a really odd breakfast. Any updates on Husechu, if he's gotten his visa, and Castro arriving in Atlanta?
Have not heard. Both would be expected in Atlanta early this week, and the earlier the better, because that'll give them both a chance to contribute on Saturday. I mean, obviously Castro hasn't trained with the team, but you're probably going to want him to mix in as quick as possible because he's not coming from being out of season. He has been playing. He has been training. Fitness should be pretty good. And you're going to want to get him in the mix as quick as you can. Husechu has been training with the team, and he does have time on the pitch with them. So you would expect him to potentially go in even quicker. And if they can get some training sessions in this week and prep, then the better off this team will be on Saturday, and much better off they will be once you get to Mexico next week.
Anthony Neitzel has taken issue with our resident member of the hashtag GK Union. It's a goal-scoring opportunity, in all caps. It is not called a shot-taking opportunity, lowercase. Ref's call was wrong, and pros scrambled to come up with any way to support their guy despite knowing the call was wrong.
Now, a couple things. One, they are going to defend their guy as much as possible, and that's to be expected. Two, it went past a goal-scoring opportunity to a it was a shot. Like, the opportunity was taken. So the actual, acronym of denying an obvious goal-scoring opportunity, and this was something that Webb specified, it didn't deny it because the opportunity was taken. Then his judgment came down to, did it keep an obvious goal from occurring? I don't know if that's where the line should be. And again, I can't think of a comparison. I can't think of a precedent. I can't think of a situation like this that played out in this way. I don't like the precedent that this is set because it gives the referee an out in any of these, and it gives the player the ability to take the chance on just knocking down a shot and saying, well, it wasn't on goal. It wasn't definitely on goal. You don't know that was on goal. And arguing, that to get a yellow card in it, and referees going yellow there instead of a red for an obvious intentional handball in a situation where you are trying to deny an obvious goal. He doesn't know because Willis is 45 yards from goal. He doesn't know if that's definitely on goal or not. By putting his hands up, he thinks it is. By blocking it in the way he did, he thinks it's an obvious goal that can happen here. And that should affect the thinking in terms of yellow or red. If he doesn't think that shot is on goal, he's not putting his hands up. That's my thought on it. But it's all interpretation because this has never really happened in something that we've seen. I'm sure it's happened somewhere in the world, don't get me wrong. And I'd love to hear how referees handled it at that point because I think more often than not they gave a red. But in this case, now you have an explanation as to why it was appropriate for that not to be a red. And that explanation, I don't think fits the way the situation played out. Because Willis is not doing what he did if he thinks that shot is not goal-bound. And Webb's explanation is that it's not obviously goal-bound. So you're interpreting it one way and deciding for the card, but that interpretation is different from the player who committed the action. It's not a good place to be.
Michael had, in addition to giving him the visa update, so he was looking for a timeline on getting Miles and Bello into the 18.
Don't know. Bello played on Saturday against Charlotte. I have not heard anything about any setbacks from that. It was a behind closed doors scrimmage for Atlanta United 2 and Charlotte Independence. Finished in a draw. Nothing on Bello having any problems coming out of it, which is a good sign. Miles has trained a little bit. We've seen some of the pictures. So, where is he in terms of recovery and any risk of further injury? That's going to probably determine what availability he has this weekend. I think if players are healthy and Bello and Robinson are 2 and Castro and Josetu are in the team, that's 2 more. You want to try to get them minutes on Saturday. You want to win on Saturday because it's your home opener. It's a league match. It's 3 points that you should take, obviously. But you also want to use Saturday to get ready for Club America. You're not punting on CONCACAF Champions League now because of Joseph being hurt. You're not giving up on the competition, and you should not. So Saturday is a way to get 3 points, but also to get these guys ready if they are able. If you think they can factor in for Wednesday, then you want to get them some minutes here. And, where's the fitness for Josetu and Castro? Can they play 90? Can they start and give you 60? What's the fitness for Robinson and Bello? Are they able to start, or are they going to be options off the bench? But you'd like to have all 4 available in Mexico next Wednesday.
Chris Hutchison, a couple of thoughts. He says, we need a rental Rondon. And then he also says that I think it was one of the best renditions.
Hold that thought. Because This is a name that's come up a ton, and we talked about it on Soccer Over There last night. This is what you have to be careful with that. One, I don't know if you're going to be able to make the financials work. If you can pull off a Christian Pavón type of loan, you have to remember that was not just a loan because Boca Juniors wanted to be nice to the Galaxy. That was a loan that was setting up a purchase. You're probably not looking to do that here because Joseph Martinez would be expected to be back next year. So you're not looking to go get a Solomon Rondon because then you're not going to have a designated player spot unless you move Barco or Pitti at that point, which is possible, but you're not looking to add another forward. So that part has to be kept in mind. Second part that has to be kept in mind, Rondon would be coming from China. Quarantine is going to be part of this conversation. Visa approval is going to be part of this conversation. You're not going to see a player from China come to the United States and be able to play anytime soon. It's just not going to happen. So that factors into this conversation about just go get him. He's the obvious one. Maybe not because of all of those factors. I don't think you can make the financials work. That's the number one factor for me, but I also don't think you'd be able to have him be part of your team anytime soon. It could be 2-3 months. Easy. And do you want to do that? You know, I think you do have the pieces to play with what you have shortly right now, but do you want your big replacement to be absent for that long? Probably not. So I think there's a lot of complications with a player coming from China. I don't see it being an easy move anyway, and with Rondon, I think the financials are going to be very hard to work out because I don't think you're looking for a long-term purchase, and unless you just catch a club that wants to be nice and give you a cut rate deal because that's all you can do, that usually doesn't happen.
And I would just say for any player that you have in mind that you think that you would like to add to Atlanta United, and I'm guessing right now this is in order of consideration. Salary number, trying to work that in. And really these next two might be B1 and B1A, dealing with visa and dealing with quarantine. So those are the three things that you have to kind of keep an eye on with anybody that you would have in mind that you would want to add to this roster. Those three things going forward.
Well, quarantine's going to affect certain countries, not everybody. So that's something that you have to remember with where you're bringing players in from. And I think China would be the most complicated place to bring players into MLS from right now. It's just a fact. So more than anything, the financials. You're not going to be able to bring in a designated player, and the idea of what the Galaxy did with their loan for Pavone, you have to factor in that Boca was willing to do it because they knew they were very likely, or they were contractually bound to get a very large transfer fee as part of the deal, or loan fee, but they weren't going to get it next year, or they weren't going to get it last year. That was how the Galaxy could get him in the short term. It was the fact they knew they were going to get something the next year because the Galaxy weren't going to keep Alessandrini and Zlatan. So that's why Boca did the deal. You have to remember that, because I don't know if Atlanta has that kind of leverage for whatever move they're going to make here.
Couple more on the timeline before news and notes. Chris also liked the national anthem in Nashville, said it was one of the best renditions he's ever heard. Ricky Ricardo keeping the response from fans from one to another and the yell and repeat. He's just saying one person yells Atlanta, the other person responds United, using the hashtag Keep It Simple.
Well, that's what I've generally heard, yeah. That's what people have said that they do.
And then Shiva said that Jeff Lorenowitz had a great interview on 92.9 The Game this morning. He said they've worked so hard all preseason, and for the opening of CCL, there's no reason to change expectations now.
No, there's no reason to do it. I mean, every team has injuries happen, and you have to deal, and you're built to be able to deal. And Atlanta's had quite a few injuries, and they are dealing. And we'll see how they deal with Joseph Martinez being out, and we'll start to see that on Saturday. It's never easy, but you don't give up on the season because of it either.
News and notes before we go. We're all caught up.
Not a ton. The Union have done something interesting. They have announced that they are buying down the contract of midfielder Alejandro Bedoya. So he's not going to be a designated player. This came from Jonathan Tannenwald of the Philadelphia Inquirer. Usually you don't do that unless you have a designated player coming. Have not heard about any designated players coming to Philadelphia, so we will be waiting to see who that could be. Also, LAFC, the large ownership group, has bought out half of a 20% stake, so a 10% stake, that's held by Malaysian businessman Vincent Tan. That deal, that price tag, values the franchise at more than $700 million. That's according to a report by Bloomberg. So Atlanta on the Forbes reporting was valued at $500 million as the number one. LAFC wasn't too far behind. Now you've got a sale that gets you to a valuation of $700 million for LAFC. Those numbers keep going up. The Forbes valuations that some people said were inflated are showing that they're not matching sales that are happening across the board. So that's pretty impressive for LAFC that you're pulling this kind of money, and if you're Vincent Tan, you're probably pretty happy about a good investment.
Yeah, because then he can turn around and use that with Cardiff City and his other investments as he's trying to get Cardiff City back to the Premier League.
He could do other things with it. You never know.
No.
DC United's added Mohamed Abu in the central midfield. Another holding midfielder added to a list of a lot of holding midfielders. Maybe Russell Canales is going to be a right back, and that's just what it's going to be, because I don't know why you add another central midfielder at this point when you need a right back, unless you decide that you already have one. And is Abu going to be a replacement for Canales in the midfield, or are you going to go with Felipe and Junior Moreno the whole way? We'll see. We'll see how this goes for DC.
I think we're caught up. I think it's a show.
Okay, then it's a show. John decreed it, so we're done. It's good. We'll be back in a few hours.
Caught up on the timeline, caught up on news and notes.
All right, well, we're done. So we'll be back in a few hours with the Georgia High School Games of the Week. Roswell hosting Parkview. Girls action starts right before 6 o'clock. We'll be on about 5:45 on the Soccer Down Here app, on soccerdownhere.net, on Spreaker. You can also listen back anytime on your favorite podcatcher. We'll be back in the morning, Wall Pass Wednesday. We'll keep you posted on any Atlanta United acquisition news, any injury updates, anything else that comes out today on Twitter, at Soccer Down Here. If you are looking for a hat or a scarf or a beanie, we have them. Send us a message. We'll get you taken care of. We'll get that shipped out. Our friend Jorge B. has a hat coming later today. Thanks for supporting the show, Jorge, and thanks to everybody else who tweeted at us and has bought stuff in the past, or will be coming out on Friday to the Brewhouse Cafe for the run-up presented by Appolinsky and Associates. You'll be coming out for a chance to win 2 tickets to Atlanta and Cincinnati. So if you don't have tickets, and I think it's either a sellout or they are down to singles, if you don't have tickets yet, come out to the Brewhouse, hang out with John and Kelly, who are hosting the show, and try to win some tickets from our friends at Heineken.
And also, don't forget to go to our Teespring store, teespring.com/soccer-down-here for all of T-shirts and stuff like that. That's also a part of supporting the show, which means we could do more things and continue supporting the show to continue to do more things. So obviously we can't thank you all enough for sending us the photos when you're out in the community and when you're traveling and stuff like that, that you guys are carrying the SDH gear with you and having it as a part of your wardrobe. It's very, very humbling and very, very cool.
It is, and we'll see more of that as we go for sure. We'll see some of that on Friday at the Brewhouse, and we might see some of that tonight at Roswell High School. Roswell Parkview, 5:45 on the app and on the website. We'll talk to y'all then. Mucha plata, y'all.
Mucha plata.